Sangwan, and my YouTube channel is Master Mariner Amit Sangwan. So in continuation with the previous video which was made on the documents to be prepared by the chief officer or the mate at the load port, we have this next video in the continuation, and it is on documents to be prepared by the mate at the discharge port. So in this video we will see what all documents are required and what all documents need to be prepared by the chief officer at the discharge port on a crude oil tanker. So this is the list of documents required. One is the arrival ullage report, which is prepared when the vessel is berthed and all the tanks are inspected and gauged, and an arrival ullage report is prepared. Some ports, some surveys may need also the ballast report, and we have the draft and tanks comparison log. We have the hourly comparison log, a key meeting for transfer operations signed prior to the starting of the operations between the chief officer and the loading master, the last 3 cargoes as required by the surveyor, the sample receipt of the samples received at the load port, the slop report on arrival and departure, and the statement of facts, which is also called as the timesheet, security petrol rounds in accordance with the ISPS code, the temperature log for water ballast pumps and cargo oil pumps, of the during operation checklist as per the company's SMS, ship show safety checklist, and then prior cargo operation checklist as per company's SMS. Then we have the crude oil washing checklist, because at every discharge port we require to do crude oil washing, and a dry receipt, and at the end remaining on board report. So we will see all these documents one by one, and we will see this what needs to be prepared. So when you arrive at the discharge port, together with the surveyor, the chief officer goes to gauge the tanks, and ullages are measured and temperature is taken to calculate the quantity of cargo on board the ship. So all the companies, or most of the ships, they have a pre-programmed Excel sheet where you need to fill up only the ullage and the cargo quantity in volume and the temperature, and the rest of the calculations are complete or done automatically in the pre-programmed Excel sheet. But nevertheless, the chief officer should be aware of manually calculating the cargo figures, because you cannot always rely on the pre-programmed Excel sheets. So there may be times when you need to do manual calculations. Also, you can take the help of your lodicator. So if your lodicator is good, then you just put the ullages there and you get the quantities from the lodicator, or else you take your ullage tables. Now you fill in the ullages here and then with the corresponding ullages you find out the corresponding volume in the tank in cubic meters. If there is any UTI correction, then you fill the UTI correction here, and this is the sounding of the free water in the tanks, if any, and this is the quantity of free water, if any, in the cargo tanks. Then the temperature, normally 3 temperatures are taken, top, middle and bottom, and this is the average temperature. So this information in this Excel sheet you have to manually fill, and the right side of this Excel sheet is pre-programmed, and all these calculations are done automatically by taking the information from here. So here is your tank number, here is the cargo grade, the ullage and the free water and the temperature, and then the TOV which you have filled up from the ullage tables, and then the quantity of free water in barrels, and then the gross observed volumes. So the TOV minus fresh water, free water gives you GOV, to which if you apply VCF gives you GSV, gross standard volume, and after applying the weight correction factor you get the metric tons. So all your figures are here. Now you have your figures in barrels and cubics and tons, and it depends upon port to port where they want to take figures in barrels, or whether they want to take in cubics, or they want to take in metric tons. So all 3 figures are here. We have 2 figures, one before applying the VAF and the second after applying the VAF. This is for comparison. So this Excel sheet has to be prepared. Once this Excel sheet is prepared, we go to the next documents. The next documents are, you may have to prepare a ballast report on arrival. which at some ports is required by the surveyor. So you have an arrival ballast report, you fill your ballast tanks and sounding, volume and weight, and then later it is signed on by the chief officer, and the surveyor may or may not sign this. Then again you have to prepare one ballast report during departure also, which may be required by the surveyor. So you fill in the relevant details here. So this is one. And then you have if you're going at the discharge board and on a crude oil tanker you're going to do crude oil washing. So for crude oil washing there are checklists in the cow manual, and these checklists have to be filled up. So basically there are 3 checklists for the crude oil washing operations. One is checklist before cargo discharge, the second is a checklist before, during and after crude oil washing procedures, and these checklists have to be filled up. So this is checks during crude oil washing and checks after crude oil washing. So this checklist have to be filled up on a crude oil tanker. And then we go on the next document, which may be required by some surveyors at some ports, which is the report of the last 3 cargoes. So you, as per tank wise, you put here the last 3 cargoes, the last cargo, the second last cargo, and the third last cargo, which is then signed by the chief officer. Once we do this, we go to the next document. At some ports, the surveyors of the port may require the content of O2 and H2S in the cargo tanks. So normally at the discharge board they don't want it, they don't ask for it, but sometimes they may ask for it. So basically you prepare this report also, where you put the tank number, the cargo grade, the O2 content and the H2S content. And then we go to the next document, which is the overboard seals. So at the load port, the surveyor puts seals on the overboard cargo overboard valve and the sea chest valve. So the seals are mentioned here, and this document is filled up, and this is signed by the chief officer and the cargo surveyor. So this is an important record, and the seals should remain intact in the discharge board, so that it is a proof that nothing wrong has been done with the cargo and valves has not been operated. Then there is a pre-discharge cargo meeting, and this pre-discharge cargo meeting takes place between the loading master and the ship's chief officer or the cargo officer. This is also called as the key meeting, where all the relevant details are filled up, like the cargo grade, the density, the temperature, the total quantity on board, quantity to discharge, H2S content in the tanks, and then the ship and the terminal agreements. That is, the vessel offers how many arms, or the terminal offers how many loading arms. So how many manifolds are there in the vessel, and how many manifolds they will be using. Then the vessel's maximum discharge capability, and then the maximum allowable pressure at the manifold, and the tanks to discharge, lines to be used for discharging, crude oil washing plan of which tank the crude oil washing is to be carried out, and the maximum height of manifold above the water, and the venting system. So normally during discharging, IG system is used for venting. Similarly, the terminal confirms how many manifolds connections they are going to provide, and then the maximum rate accepted by the terminal, and the terminal cargo line pressure restriction, shore tanks to load, height of tanks, shore lines used, size of lines, shore restriction for cow, shore restriction for max height of manifold, and then any other additional information which may be required by the terminal, like the distance of the vessel to the shore tanks, etc., etc. So whatever the information is there is to be filled up here. So additional information from vessel to the terminal, that the vessel needs about 20 minutes notice to stop cargo discharging. Okay, in case of emergency it can be stopped at any point of time, but for normal stoppages the vessel may need 20 minutes, or as per the vessel to vessel it is vessel specific. Then the means of communication, and then we go to the next page. If any so agreed emergency stop procedures, and what to do in case of emergencies on the ship. So this has to be agreed prior to start commencement of the operations, and this information has to be shared with all the duty officers and all the personnel on board, and all the personnel on the shore side, so they are aware of everything. Then you have the statement of facts, which starts right with the end of passage. So you're going to fill up this statement of facts at the start, when there is end of passage, And then it is continued that when was the end of passage, when the vessel arrived, then no attended, vessel anchored, port authorities on board, free petty granted, port authorities away. So all this information is being filled up here, and this is filled up right till the commencement of passage. All the events in between are recorded here, and this is a very important document which has to be very carefully filled up. All the remarks, delays, stoppages and everything is filled up in the remarks column. So after the statement of facts, we have a declaration of security. This declaration of security required by some ports, and this is also required by the ship's SSP plan. And so this is here, declaration of security between ship and port, also signed between the SSO, who is normally the chief officer, and the PFSO, port facility security officer. So all the details are being filled up here. Then you have a sample receipt. So normally at load port, cargo samples are taken and the samples are handed over to the chief officer. So all these samples are marked here, so that when you are handing it over to the surveyor or the receiver, then take the signature of that person, so you have a record that these samples have been handed over to him. And then the next is the slope certificate before loading and after loading. Correction, slope certificate before discharging and after discharging. You may not have loaded slopes, and there may be some slopes. If you do not have any slopes, then you just write vessel has no slopes, tank washings on board, and get the signature of the surveyor, who will check the slopes and sign it. Similarly, you have to prepare a slope report after the discharging operation to check that nothing has been taken in the slope tank. Then at the end of the discharge, you have to make this report called as the dry receipt, as the surveyor signs after checking that all the tanks are dry. Normally the surveyor will sign it for receipt only, because no surveyor, they don't sign it for dry receipt. Normally it is used on product tankers, but sometimes the company may ask you to use it on a crude oil tanker also. Then you have the ship shore safety checklist that has to be filled up before the commencement of this checklist starts right from the beginning of the cargo operations, and it continues right till the end, where all these agreements have been checked in, like what will be the emergency procedures, what will be the means of access, and the ship will stay under power, and crude oil washing operations and everything, and in gas operation, everything is included here. The repetitive checks are included here. So this in itself is entirely a different topic which can be discussed at later stage, but this is a very important checklist which has to be filled up. And then it is signed by the chief officer and then the terminal representative, and the checks has to be carried out, which is normally every 4 hours. The repetitive checks have to be carried out after every 4 hours. Then apart from this, you have the SMS checklist for prior cargo operations, which has to be filled up, and during cargo operations, which has to be filled up by the duty officer. Apart from this, there are letter of protest, which are company specific or charter specific forms, and the charter will inform you what all LOPs are required. In addition to that, if you feel that some other additional LOP, letter of protest, is required, then you have to fill up that also. Now these LOPs are a very important document which may be required even after the cargo completed, and even after 1 or 2 years, if some claim arises or some issue arises related to the cargo and the owner and the charter, and may have to go to court, and it may be used. So you have to carefully fill up. Normally the master is responsible for LOPs, but he designates the chief officer to fill up, and then after the chief LOPs are made, together with the master, the chief officer discusses, and the loading master signs the letter of protest. At some ports they deny signing it, so you write there refuse to sign. Now this is the end of the video. Thank you for watching the video, and please subscribe and share my YouTube channel, Master Mariner Amit Sangwan. I'll continue making this new tutorial videos. Next video will be on the sequence of loading and the sequence of discharging operations. And thank you very much for watching the video, and please subscribe my channel, Master Mariner Amit Sangwan.